This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. This is my favorite scene from Quentin Tarantino's 2009 film Inglourious Basterds. On one end of the table we have Colonel Hans Landa, a highly intelligent but manipulative opportunist. And on the other end, Emmanuel, a young French citizen who owns a cinema in Paris. Moments earlier, Emmanuel was discussing the prospect of lending her cinema for a premiere of a German propaganda film when Landa, the chief of security for the event, joined the table and asked her to answer some questions as a simple formality. So they talk for a brief moment over 2 delicious strudels, and the meeting ends. Innocent enough, except there is a thick coat of icing on this cake. Emmanuelle is not who she claims to be. Her real name is Shoshana Dreyfus, a French Jewish girl whose family was murdered by Landa a few years back.
Shoshana!
Let's talk layers. Emmanuelle's true identity scrambles the plainly laid out scene and completely alters its motivation by introducing a new question. Does Hans Landa recognize Shoshana? This in turn motivates the audience to look for an answer by reconsidering both the verbal and the visual implications. Except there is no answer, or rather it doesn't matter. Which is bizarre because normally the audience would be able to discern the undertone once necessary information is provided. As a matter of fact, there are multiple scenes from this film that exemplify this idea, where a piece of information given after the fact reshapes the entire scene for the audience. However, this is an icing, something that is on top of the cake. As such, Emmanuelle's true identity in reality is anything but a revelation, as it is clearly identified well before this time. I only presented the 2 layers in reverse order to better emphasize the scene's lack of interest and clarification. Let me show you what I mean.
Oui. 2 strudels, un pour moi et un pour la demoiselle.
In regards to the big question, there are 2 popular takes on Landa's actions. One is that Landa did in fact recognize Shoshana and decided to taunt her by ordering a non-kosher strudel made with pig lards. The other is that he ordered the plate as a part of his regular interrogation tactics to see how she reacts. That, or because he really likes strudels, I guess. Both options are viable. After all, Landa is established from the very first act as a dangerously competent detective with narcissistic tendencies.
Veuillez m'excuser, j'ai oublié de commander la crème.
The same thing applies to the cream. Pairing meat with dairy products would make the plate non-kosher, not that it matters if the strudel was already non-kosher, but call it a mind game. Yet this could just as well be viewed as an exhibition of Landa's controlling character, his exertion of dominance over Shoshana, not a sign of his knowledge. Also, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure that eating non-kosher doesn't matter if you're in a life-threatening situation. That is, if the plate even was non-kosher, right? Which is why there is...
Pour moi, un café serré. Et pour la demoiselle, un verre de lait.
Kosher debate aside, Landa ordering a glass of milk can be seen as a nod to the day he slaughtered Shoshana's family, supporting the claim that he knows exactly who she is. However, this could be interpreted yet again as a demonstration of his narcissism, belittling his opponent by asserting his superiority. Do you see what I mean? It's not about finding a definitive answer, but acknowledging the stress of uncertainty. For instance, consider the fact that this scene is also deliberately shot and paced in a way that reminds the audience of the opening sequence. In both scenarios, the scene begins by having Landa, who is in a position of authority, in a wider shot than the ones being interrogated. The visually established power imbalance allows for an interesting dynamic as the shots slowly confine the characters to mirror the rising tension. The closer Landa is to the camera, the more threatening he appears, and the closer the opponents, the more vulnerable they appear. This polarity continues until the scene reaches its boiling point, where both parties are locked in close-ups and Landa drops the bomb.
You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
With such a strong visual callback, the audience unconsciously expects a similar climax. But that never happens.
Mais maintenant, sur ma vie, impossible de m'en souvenir.
Instead of a resolution, this scene reiterates the same question. Does Hans Landa recognize Shoshana? Is the final line an illustration of his awareness, a repeating game of catch and release?
Bon, ce ne devait pas être important.
Or his expertise, the perfect showcase of perseverance and attentiveness of a skilled predator? If it wasn't clear enough, the primary objective of this scene is in-building tension, not mystery solving.
Verdict.
So the answer simply cannot matter because tension feeds on ambiguity. Simply put, it was never about Landa's knowledge, but about Shoshana's lack of knowledge. Good cake. One big problem. None of these actually reveal what the cake is.
C'est acceptable.
The reason why this scene is my favorite isn't because it is the most intense sequence, it's because it highlights Hans Landa's most interesting trait.
Ooh, that's a bingo!
Contradiction. There's a reason why so many people talk about the opening or that bar scene over anything else in the film. They are well written, well shot, beautifully paced and edited. They are the epitome of cinematic conflict that teaches everything there is to know about building tension, but not necessarily about Hans Landa. If you go back to the restaurant scene, you'll notice that alongside the two layers of conversation is a constant reference to this strudel. For a mere instrument of ambiguity, the strudel is accentuated one too many times, both verbally and visually. And sure, Tarantino loves to shoot food, yeah. And the strudel does look incredibly delicious. But then, why include this shot?
Enfin, bon, ce ne devait pas être important.
Because that's exactly who Hans Landa is. The reason why he seems more than capable of abandoning everything he stands for in a blink of an eye is because he never shows what he truly stands for. He's not just an opportunist, but an actor. And it's his theatricality that makes him intimidating to confront, alluring to listen to, and charismatic to watch.
Merci.
When confronting a man hiding a Jewish family, Landa will say that he loves his nickname, the Jew Hunter, precisely because he earned it, taking that very concept to essentially build the denouement of his act. But when he is with Aldo, the leader of the Bastards, he will state that the nickname holds no significance and that he's skilled at finding people in general because he needs to emphasize his neutrality to earn Aldo's trust. Yes, this entire act is about Landa betraying the Nazi Germany for his personal gains, which in itself is extremely conflicting, given how the scene right before this was Landa exposing and killing Brigitte von Hammersmark for being a traitor. From the very first line, Landa has been subtly building up and selling the strudel as an enticing menu. He has his own way of enjoying the pastry, with espresso and a scoop of cream. He prioritizes it over the conversation, and its delicacy is ultimately affirmed by the aesthetically pleasing close-ups. But at some point, the camera will stop rolling, and the act will end. And when that happens,
Il y avait une autre chose que je voulais vous demander.
you will see
Enfin, bon, ce ne devait pas être important.
Hans Landa. Hello everyone, thanks for watching this video. Inglourious Basterds is one of my favorite Tarantino films, if anything for its insane rewatchability. And I say that, but funny enough, I actually would have never thought of making this video if not for a completely different film that I watched on Mubi, the sponsor for today's video. Mubi is an online curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe, ranging from works of iconic directors to emerging auteurs. And since every film is hand-picked, It's a great way to watch films you already love and also discover new films that you've never seen before. So the film that I watched on Mubi was The Nightingale by Jennifer Kent, the director of Babadook. While the film itself is completely different, The Nightingale also does an excellent job at building tension, subverting expectations, and most importantly, layering the scenes with subtext. It can be a very intense film, but I do recommend that you check it out if you can. And of course, I am currently in Canada, so movie selections may look different if you're elsewhere, but rest assured, Mubi always has wonderful selection of films available at all times. And best of all, you can try Mubi free for 30 days right now by using my link at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. That's mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. So go check it out, and I'll see you in the next one.